every other person feel that it's usual. It's like that. Black president into the minds of people, into the consciousness of people. And it worked. So, if the government wants things to sell, because there's no way you can give me money and I'll tell a bad story about you, let them start investing. It's still on record that if you go around the world, the second largest is in the amount of movies being produced. So India is the first. Nollywood is the second before Hollywood and others. It's on the number of movies being produced yearly. And I told you, I say India is achieving their own feat because they have government support. We don't. And we are still coming second in the number of films we produce.
Nollywood films have gained widespread prominence, especially within the African continent. Even today in Nigeria, we have variations in the Nollywood industry.
There are associations, then there are these woods. The other woods that are coming are still nomenclature. So everybody's trying to say, oh, we have something that is, showing. But the general name, whether you're Kannywood, whether you're Idoma Wood, whether you're Igbo Wood, all of them still have associations that propel all those things.
Is a mustard seed, then nurture it, water it, grow it into that tree in your rainforest.
And she already stands in front of it and asks me to take a picture. And I'm really
highlighted the prevalent social issue in our society.
There are certain things you take that's good for you, at the same time there's a bad side.
Yeah. What is it that you want to leave us with today?
Our reality with Sky, 10:30 a.m. every Monday, and it repeats at 12 midnight.
Despite attempts in some circles to downplay the achievements of this administration, I have no scintilla of doubt that history will be fairer
In the wake of 2023 political campaigns in September and October 2022, political consultations deepened as the cloud got darker, with the frontrunners of various political platforms engaging Nigerians on top issues seeking for answers. Tonight, Tuesday Live shall unravel silent issues ranging from good governance, infrastructure deficit, security, economic stability, transparency, accountability, and of course the rule of law as the campaign intensifies. And we shall be taking a background report put together by our political correspondent, Timothy Yusuf, after which we'll go into the discussion panel proper. I am Jumai Yusuf. We'll be right back.
With electioneering campaigns and consultations ongoing by the various political parties to sway electorate ahead of the 2023 general elections, breaches the laws are considered inimical to the process.
Nigeria is looked up to as a leader
not only on the continent of Africa, but all over the world. The nation's security agencies and other relevant bodies are expected to gear up in the performance of their statutory responsibilities professionally and objectively.
The question we are asking is, as you prepare for the election, for voting, how do you prepare to deal with political criminals who will manipulate the process?
Stakeholders insist no stone will be left unturned in tracking and bringing to justice the perpetrators of recent incidents of politically motivated violence, vote trading and ballot box snatching, as witnessed in recent elections in Nigeria. Timothy Yusuf.
You're welcome back, and don't forget we have reports that will drive this conversation, and of course the phone lines will be open at the appropriate time for you to contribute to the discussion. I have in the studio gentlemen who have a conversation with me on the salient issues of campaigns in Nigeria as it gets deeper and deeper. I have first in the studio Ni Akistiju. He's the political affairs analyst and member APC Presidential Council. You're welcome to Tuesday Live.
Thanks so much. It's a pleasure.
I also have in the studio Sam Amadi, professor of law and former chairman of the Nigerian Electricity Commission, also director of Center for Public Policy and Research. You're welcome to Tuesday Live.
Thank you very much.
And our regular Menasara Kogo Umar, public affairs analyst and international commentator on social relations and global politics. You're welcome to Tuesday Live.
It's all my honor to contribute in nation building.
And joining us via Zoom, Nkoyo Toyo is the former ambassador to Ethiopia. You're welcome to Tuesday Live.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm glad that at least there's a woman here to assist me in the conversation. What do you think, gentlemen? Affirmative action, 35%. Let me begin with you. It's another campaigning season, actually, and the atmosphere is charged. Passions are high. Stakes are at peak. Why is campaign so important to capture the electorate? I'll start with you, Ni.
Thank you very much. The essence of democracy itself is campaign, because it's during the campaign that candidates and their parties, as it were, markets their candidates, to the electorate, as it were. So, and that is why it is called campaign. And because in all human endeavors that you have to sell or you have to engage from the unit to the multitude, there's always a channel of interfacing with that multitude. So it's so you may have marketing campaign, you may have advocacy and all that. So political campaigns, are the equivalent of such marketing campaigns. So for political parties, it is important because it enables them to go from their platform to the general populace. Of course, we all know, anybody that has been following politics understand the fact that there are two tiers of engagement, at least by our own political arrangements, two tiers of campaigns. You have the primary campaign where you talk strictly to members, registered members of your party. And after that, when candidates emerge, they go from the political parties to the larger electorate. And the larger electorate might not have even heard about the candidate. It's a period of that campaign that the Electoral Act and the Constitution, as it were, allowed the parties to sell the goodness, the values, and of course the attraction of individual candidates to the people. It also now allows the people to also evaluate and of course determine if this person would be able, to serve them. The unfortunate thing is that there's no heart on the human face, as those are popular Shakespearean quotation to measure the hearts of a man. But the truth of the matter is, over time, the electorate will become so adept at evaluating the possible capacity of an individual candidate to deliver on the kind of promises it's making to the general public.
Okay, you've given an overview of what campaign is. Let me bring in Doc Professor Sam Amadi, it's a known fact that presidential campaigns are rich in information and news reports, press releases, parties, and press, about candidates. It helps the potential voter to have knowledge about these candidates, know them well, and the issues they bring to the table. So how does this help change the opinion of the electorate when it comes to voting?
Well, I think that's an important issue to raise. First, the whole idea of democracy is based on the notion of representation, and that means people first know their interests, then they appoint people or elect people to represent those interests. And so in ancient democracy, whether it's Greek or in Roman Empire, the people met in a square. Everybody could meet, male adults, and they can hear themselves and make the rules. But electoral democracy requires that we elect people. And 3 key points. One is that, American founding father said, he says, where the people are literate and the press is free, everything is safe. So democracy is constructed around a tripod. One is that people know their interests. 2, public deliberation, that people can discuss. So I know what I need. I know that I'm a rational decider. I want the best for myself. That assumption of rationality. And then intersubjectivity, we can discuss. I can deliberate with you. And finally, that the process allows the outcome of that rationality and deliberation to happen. So what political information does, and this is where media and opinion models play key role, is that they help the people get the information they need to form a judgment. You talked about the fact that at the point people get adept at knowing who can represent them. Now, with that information, both in terms of disclosures about these candidates and parties, first they start with manifesto, they start with party programs. So that bridges the information asymmetry. People don't know, just like a used car seller. Now, when a used car seller is selling a car, he knows how many times it has stopped him on the road. So he can repaint, refurbish it. You don't know how many times that car has stopped on the road. So economists argue what they call, like olive trade. You don't know. You are, except there's a disclosure. And that's why the law requires disclosure. So the media help now to fill that gap. So I now know more about you. I now know whether this car has failed on the road to Jos or to Kaduna or to Abuja or to whatever. Without that information, I will be in the dark to know exactly whether this is the right kind of person I need. So yes, democracy thrives on information, but one of the shortfalls that we don't know enough of what we don't know, and that's why literacy is required for election. You also have to be literacy in English. People need to have access to information, and so we talk about the right to information as equally adjunct to the right to participate. If people don't have access to know, then they will not have the rationality to make the best decision. And so if much democracy is focused on freedom of the press, freedom of expression, freedom of information, the idea is that the press itself now becomes like a trustee of the people. They're the ones who help the people generate the information. And so in many democracies, they regulate access to the media. They want a level of fairness so that each of these candidates and parties can have opportunity to bring out their information. 1, 2, that the journalists themselves and every other citizen can have ability to say what they know about the parties and the candidates. In that discourse, voters, whether literate or illiterate, now begin to have a feel of who these candidates are, what they've done in the past, what they will do for them. The problem we have is that oftentimes, because of the level of literacy and the lack of information dissemination and diffusion, it's possible that some voters, we call them trapped voters. It's like captive. They don't have information to change their mind, so they're voting after a pattern. So this is what we did 4 years ago. We don't have any information to know whether it worked or it didn't work. So they now vote after a pattern because they don't really have information to change their input to now say, okay, Hajia was last time we voted for Hajia, but from the facts we've seen, Hajia has not performed. So assessing candidates means that the voters themselves have access to information, they little enough, whether in vernacular or in foreign English, and also that the media and institutions are able to intermediate those information. So you must have open society, freedom of information, and of course you must have very enlightened people to maybe help those who are not enlightened to make the right decision about. And the parties play key role. That's why the party campaign is an opportunity, even though it's tendentious. The party wants to sell the good side of itself, clearly. But it helps, the party's campaign is an opportunity to help electorates have access to information and make the choice.
Yes, as journalists, we're supposed to be gatekeepers and agenda setters.
Absolutely, and disseminators.
Disseminators at the same time. Let me bring Minister Kogo into this conversation. What do you think, in your opinion, the present electioneering campaign ongoing, how do you think on a 10 to 5 or 10 to 20, how would you assess the progress so far? Is it same old, or is there something new? There's a new flavor to it?
Well, my perception regarding the electioneering processes, which is about 2 months now already, beginning from September to is most embarrassing, most disgusting, most unprofessional, and most unexpected. Democracy is a game for the evolution of the entrenchment of the supremacy of the interests and aspirations of the citizenry, as provided under Section 14, subsection 1 of the Constitution that says sovereignty belongs to the people. Now, in exercising such a democratic right, it is very, very important for the political gladiators to play by the rules of the game. In other words, to play by the rules provided by the country. Section 221 down to 228 chronicled regulations, standard, and the ethics regarding the way you should go about political activities. The way you should campaign, the issue of use of money, the issue of being civilized in the way you campaign in decorum and order and the rest of it. Politics is a mechanism towards entrenchment of the development for the nation. And democracy as a model, like I said earlier on, is rooted in bringing about the decision of the popular people to determine the destiny. Now, it is in that context that you see we have the Constitution making a very excellent provision, like I said, Section 221 to 228, and you have Electoral Act coming to complement the position of the Constitution in setting the rules and regulations, the guidelines expected of the citizens, especially the political power players, to participate. Politics is a profession of noble men and women. For them to be matriculated into the game with the ultimate objective that at the end of it they get graduated as statesmen. Statesmen should be those people that are seeing national issues, seeing the whole country, putting their interests of the country over and above any individual, primordial or any other subsidiary consideration as in pure interest of the nation, especially taking into cognizance the motto of the Federal Republic of Nigeria provided under Section 15, subsection 1 as unity and faith, peace and progress. Now, in doing that, some eminent statesmen came into the being trying to complement, that is, trying to exercise the civic responsibility of citizenry to contribute in nation building as provided under sections 21 and 23 of the Constitution by bringing about peace accord for the political power place. I'm talking about His Excellency General Abdulsalam Abubakar and His Grace Bishop Matthew Hassan Kuka and some other eminent statesmen, brought about this assembly of the, foremost politicians to come into signing some accords so that we will be able to have peace, we will be able to have it done in a civilized way, we will be able to have it devoid of any rancor, we will be able to have it devoid of all those negativities encapsulated under section 114 to 129 of the Electoral Act, so that at the end of it, it will be a game of continuous cooperation by the power players, each and every one of them to come and, but when you look at it carefully, issue-based political campaign is put at a bias. When you look at, you discover somebody talking about the grandmother of somebody, the educational something of so. We have passed that level. By the time the people now express their interest in the forms, and then they got the clearance of the security agencies, clearance of INEC, clearance of their political parties, past the level of primaries, become the standard flag bearers. We have passed the preliminary levels of assessing the decision. Besides, if you have anything, it shouldn't be based on sentimentalism or social media popularization. Rather, you go to the court of law as provided by the Electoral Act and the Constitution and get redressed. But unfortunately, in all the political parties, with the exception of just 2 political parties, I have not seen issue-based politics. A greater number of them is simply because they are doing it in flagrant refusal to tie their aspirations to manifestos, ideology, and the rest, because you discover that somebody that belongs to party Peacock tomorrow will be in the party or party Hen.
We'll come to that in the course of the conversation when we expand it further. Let me bring in Ambassador Nkoyo. She's a former ambassador to Ethiopia, and she's joining us via Zoom. Can today's campaign be seen as better than others, in your opinion?
It's a very mixed. My reaction would be very mixed. I think we are in a very different stage of public involvement and awareness. The social media impact on elections has completely changed the tenor and nature of how people generate information to either counter or reaffirm the positions which they've taken as regards knowledge or awareness of what candidates stand for and what they represent. So I think this is an election that clearly has taken advantage of what the social media can do, and we're beginning to see a little bit more of robustness in terms of people using the capabilities of social media. Now you can even talk about TikTok, you can talk about all Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all manner of things are being used to portray the and the messages which we want to. And at the bottom of all of this is the question of messaging. But you must also remember that democracy by its very nature is conflictual. Everything you do in a democracy, it pitches one person's interest against another person's interest, and by its very nature, it's conflictual. And so, what we tend to refer to as being a bit of a nuisance or being a bit of unpleasantries are actually embedded in the nature of the politics itself. What are you trying to do? You're trying to market yourself. And in trying to project yourself, you're trying to demarket another person. And in that whole process of marketing or demarketing, you tend to see in some areas people using language or using conduct that is not acceptable. But let me also say that we have made a lot of progress with the Electoral Act, now embedded in the Electoral Act. Our offenses, which I believe if the INEC could rise up in terms of its enforcement capabilities, it will be able to put some sort of boundaries to what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. So again, this is an evolving process, and I wouldn't entirely agree that it hasn't had issues. Last week, I think it was one of the candidates was with the business community in Lagos, and he raised quite a number of interesting issues. Today, again, we've seen another candidate do the same. We had a town hall meeting on Arise the other day, and some issues were also raised. I mean, in the mix of issues or non-issues and there's a lot of brick backing going around in between all of that. But that doesn't take away the fact that people are communicating and other people are listening. People are making their judgments as to where the candidates stand. And in this election, for the very first time, we're beginning to see the emergence of a third force, a very significant third force that has never been a major player in our politics. And that third force is also moderating the behavior of some of the dominant political parties in the system. So it's not entirely without a direction. If anybody were to call you today and say, what does this person represent? What does that other person? You would be still able to find in between all of what is being said a couple of things that have been said by the candidates. Maybe enough attention has not been paid to those messaging, but I believe that there is something that all of us can take away from what the candidates are saying. So I would rather say that there is a question of how do we separate the grains from the shaft. There is that processing that needs to happen, and it is the role of established media like yours to begin to aggregate some of that which is coming out from the candidates and turn it into the messaging that the electorate has to hear and use that to make their own decisions. You must also remember that the level of literacy of people are very different, and then you need to also use various media to communicate with different groups of constituencies. And that in itself also filters the message, because what you say to one group and what you say to another group sometimes does not quite sit on the same pedestal. So in conclusion, what I'm saying is that we've heard a lot of sound bites, we've heard a lot of stuff, but not all of it is negative. And we must remember that we are also seeing a very significant involvement of younger people, and they, in their exuberance, are also beginning to make the nature of the politics change. So I would say that compared to 2019, maybe a little bit more like 2015, where we had seen the transition from one party to another, we're beginning to see that kind of social engagement again by the political class, where they are able to galvanize their support base, and the support base is getting at each other in a bid to try and hold the grounds.
Okay, thank you so much for your opening comment. I will get back to you. You're not concluding, actually. I'll get back to you so that we'll continue the conversation. Let me bring Ni Akesuju. Political observers are of the view that the evolution of Nigerian political parties seems stagnated and deteriorated, especially in policies. Why are they saying that?
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't want to agree with that. One, we are actually a nascent, democracy. If we have to count it, we have to start reviewing it from 1999 to 2022 as it were. And you compare it to the established democracies. In fact, as it were, I would rather describe as a democracy as fast evolving, because we are trying to catch up with global best practices. And to that extent, what one would say is that our political players had in many ways upskilled themselves in the heart of social engagement. And I say this because 2022 is particularly peculiar, different. Different again because we have, I think, a strong, impressive electoral act. We should thank the National Assembly and Mr. President for gifting us this act. One of the major recognitions of that act is the fact that there's a need to take a longer time to get Nigerians to know the candidates of the party, and that's why the time for the campaign was increased from 90 days to 150 days. Nearly 80% increase in the period. Now, it's an affirmation of the fact that it's not just enough to have candidates just breeze by. There is a need for candidates to touch base, with the electorate and let them know more or less who they are relating with. So I acknowledge that as a major point. Then going forward, this particular campaign cycle, over the last 6 weeks, we have seen 3-4 different parties launch their manifestos. It is not the usual things we do. We assume that we have something to sell. Sometimes it's just about the individual or the personalities we want to sell, and a number of observers will say, that is why we don't have ideologically defined leaning parties,
Yes.
because there's no deliberate concentration, focus on the manifesto that is supposed to derive, from what ideology the party, stand for. Yes, issues around ideologies too are issues of huge debate. How do you even start stratifying who gets what and who does not get what? But I know that my party, over the last, since 2015, had been trying, to create a niche for itself in the public space. That we are progressive, and to that extent, we are more inclined towards a people-oriented ideology. And the manifesto that had been launched by our candidate has shown, to a large extent, that it is about service to that larger audience, the larger electorate, as it were. So what I'm trying to say essentially is that going forward, the Nigerian politician is also trying to catch up with whatever may be the global best practice. We may have, of course, our own limitations. We're trying to talk about education, literacy, and all that. When you put all that together, on the face value, it will look like limitations. But I also know that in so many parts of this country, even people without education are literate enough to know what they want, and say a number of people, those who are especially outside the political class, will say, some parts of the north, they don't understand issues. They are not exactly too literate. But I have seen in the northern parts where communities will come together and rebel against dominant parties in that community, more than any other part of the country, where they will decide that either the candidate that had been provided by the dominant party in that community is not good enough, and therefore they would decide to select a candidate, from another party that is even not strong or popular in that community. So, to that extent, I try as much as possible for us to respect each Nigerian, wherever they are. And I put this under the social contract universe. Because, yes, Prof. here is a professor of law, so he will understand what social contract, and perhaps he may help us expand. But my basic knowledge about social contract is that it does not necessarily need to be, it's not written. But what is there is that when a person decides to vote for you, on the account of what you have told that person, and he had made that decision, 4 years after, he is monitoring you. He is evaluating what you are doing. After that 4th year and you come back to him, he is going to show you your scorecard. And that will reflect in what you have done in the past 4 years. You don't need to be educated to understand those processes. And I tell you, the average Nigerian voter has that tendency. I have been on the field and I know how the average Nigerian voter think. Mostly,
are you saying there's a paradigm shift now? Are we experiencing a paradigm shift?
I don't know if it's a paradigm shift. I have always said, my first exposure to a campaign was in 1980. I was how do I call it? I was normal boy going around the street and all that. No, not green on. I was a normal. I just finished. I think I finished secondary school about 2 years before then. But wherever there was a campaign, wherever there was a rally, I would go there. And I saw how people were doing, and it became a major motivation for me. So much that by the time I clocked 18, the first thing I was looking for was for that particular party. Of course, the party was the most dominant party in the Southwest then, UPN. I was looking for where the party was meeting. My dad was a member, but again, just a marginal player. But what I'm trying to say is that I got influenced, motivated, because I saw that campaign and I saw how people conducted themselves, and most of these people were not educated. They were not educated. And I grew up knowing them as analysts of issues. So if today I'm talking about issues and all that, those were my major motivations. The shoemaker on the side, on the street, the barber, a shop and all that. Sometimes we look forward to going to the barber shop because we know that there would always be one gist or the other. You wouldn't know if it's rumor or whatever. But what I'm trying to say is, even at that level, they have platforms of decision making. And the average Nigerian, I mean, the average politician will be doing themselves a lot of hurts if you do not take into consideration the capacity of those people to rationalize.
Indeed, Professor Amadi, the parties have rolled out their manifestos. Everybody, I think, is in the public domain now. Some, but not all. But still, internal wranglings is posing a threat to the electioneering campaign. And political watchers are saying it could be the parties undoing at the polls. From the APC to the PDP, for the SDP, Labour Party, we have internal wranglings going on.
Well, I think, let me first start with this issue around, the difference between literacy and political education is different. In the First Republic, we had Medokano, who had the Talakawas providing political education. So literacy, political literacy is not the same as literacy like you go to school, you have a certificate English. What matters is that people are getting information to know. For example, talk about local person who sent somebody to National Assembly, okay? They observe, they know that the person didn't build a borehole. They can compare with the other candidate who built a borehole. That's political education. That is political literacy. They know. Now, but if they don't have information at the bigger ground of presidency, for example, a typical rural woman in Karaman and other Sokoto does not know much about either Ashaju or Atiku or P2B or Kokwanzo individually because they have not interacted with them. That is where you have to bridge that gap through campaign and the media, because you don't expect the woman in the village to know, but he knows the councillor. He knows. That's why when Babangida did option A4 and did no party basis, women became local government chairman because those women in the local government area, their neighbors know them. They can vote for Ajia. Ajia is a good woman. But when you make it big, you have to go to Abuja to get a clearance. Those party people, local people, don't have capacity. So we must take it as a responsibility to take information to those people at the local level because they don't know who is Mr. A or B because they don't live with them. Now back to the issue of conflict. The reason why we have, like Ambassador said, politics is conflictual. Now the conflict over politics is a conflict of interest. I want to be president. I want to be president. So obviously there will be a conflict. Many scholars of political science say that political science is not, politics or democracy, electoral democracy is not a harbinger of everything good. Free and fair election may not produce the best person. It may not even produce good governance. We've seen failed democracies, meaning that democracy does not produce development. But what it does is one thing. It's a conflict management mechanism. We are 4 in this room now. We decide to elect, okay, if somebody says who should go and speak on our behalf to the benefit of NTA, 4 of us cannot go.
Yes.
Democracy election is that we choose who will go. Now, if we decide to choose Hajia and we'll go through a process, everybody says, okay, Hajia, go. But if in choosing Hajia wants to go, Niyi wants to go, that's politics. Yes. Now, if the rules are set very well, the rules will say who gets to be elected. How do you get to be elected? And if we are all rule-obeying people, by the time we cast the vote and Hajia sees that she didn't win, 3 of us male ganged up against the only female, Hajia knows that the process was fair. Hajia said, well, I take it like that. So the reason why we have conflict in the parties is that 3 factors. 1, many of the politicians in Nigeria they see politics as a vocation. They live from politics. It's a professional economic incentive. And Max Weber many years ago says that 2 kinds of politicians, those who live for politics, those who live from politics. Because the payout, what you get from office holding is very massive. Nigeria has the biggest payout for public office holders. I was a student at Harvard when this guy, Terry, was going to run for presidency. And he came to train and walked down with three of his aides to come and address us.
John Kerry,
to come and address us at John F. Kennedy Hall from a train. You go become president and you get economically hot.
Yeah.
Either you come and write books to make money. But today in Nigeria, if you become
have a library.
You become a counselor. Automatically, you have become. I know my honorable members who were basically didn't have a job, but they're lucky the political godfather tapped them to go to National Assembly. Today, they're the richest people in the community. So what that does for us, it creates incentive of fight for all, fight to finish. So even if you go through a process, and that's why today we have over 700 cases on pre-election issues. Simply, you lost primary, you must fight the Supreme Court. Today, this election has been so judicialized that courts are now vacating, cancelling. You don't know who's a candidate until a few weeks of election. Why? Because, one, that incentive is economic interest. People want to get it. Second is weak political party structure. I was saying that the new Electoral Act, and it's very correct, INEC did well, but also civil society people. One of us, Ario, Daria Atayo, who died they worked hard to get this done. Now, what that law does is that it says, in the past, party leaders decide who is their candidate. So this time around, we want candidates themselves, party members, to decide their candidate. Now, the party leaders across all the parties did not follow those rules. And so you see some places in position, governors hijack the process, decide who goes, and the other person who lost out is now crying, as I won't agree. That's a second conflict. And the third one, therefore, is that the some factor driving conflict in the party is that we have strong candidates, weak party managers. In the First Republic, when I was young, in the secondary school, when we talked about Shagari time, we saw strong party chairmen.
Powerful
party chairmen and party scribes. Whether it's UPN, whether it's MPN, or whether it's NPP. They were strong, so the president or the governor cannot control the party. Today, we are seeing weak party with very powerful leaders. So either they hijack the party process against the other contenders, and those contenders become irreconcilable. So we are seeing now that, like the question asked me, are we evolving? Yes, it's like half empty, half full. We're evolving, doing well, because for the first time in 2015, we had the first time that a ruling party was defeated in election. And that was marked for us in Nigeria as democracy consolidation when President Buhari came to power. Once a party can be voted out in power, it shows progress. The second stage now is, can we have a transition that will not have too many electoral cases and not too many violence post-election? Do you have a transition also that after election, you will see good governance? Those are things people are watching out for. So, in a sense, we're evolving, we're doing well. But in another sense, we're actually going backwards in terms of party discipline, in terms of norms of politics, and in terms of a behavior of politics where people lose primaries. Look at what happened in the US a few days ago. People have lost, there have no case so far in the courts. Everybody who lost fairly. Everybody who won fairly. That's where we need to go, and then we'll be able to say we have.
There's nothing like rigging, vote buying, and all that is minimal.
I hold
Okay. We'll come to that. Ni talked about global best practices.
Yes.
Is that what we're practicing in Nigeria?
Under Section 21 of the Constitution, our concern should be evolution of our own customs, traditions, political system that should be in tandem with our own history, culture, tradition, a developmental tempo, economically, politically, and the rest. It shouldn't so much be a matter of comparing us with any other democracy in the world. Remember, if you begin to make comparison, some countries that are called advanced in democracy spent hundreds of years before they reach this level. You understand? But if you take it from the biological angle, there is no boy that is up to 23 years old that is considered as not above the level of puberty. There is no way that it is. So as far as I'm concerned, Nigeria should not be deceiving itself that we are still at the level of tutelage. I think we have passed that level long ago. If we are talking about the political trajectory of Nigeria, you should talk about Nigeria from the 1950s down to 60s, the struggle for independence, the first republic, the Republican Constitution of 1963, coming to Second Republic, about a Third Republic, up to now. All the combination of these are qualified enough to say Nigeria is a qualified democracy. And then talking about even the position of Nigeria in the Committee of Nations, it's a model all other African countries are looking upon to copy. Third world countries generally are looking upon Nigeria. So I think it's self-deceit if we say that we are still at the level of learning. I think the problem we have has to do is attitudinal. We have fine assemblage of laws, rules and regulations, but without the corresponding statesmanship, exhibition of statesmanship from the political power players. Politicians, if you look at them in Nigeria, irrespective of party belonging, you will discover that they are virtually of no different. You will discover somebody in the daytime in this party, in the night he will jump to the other party. By the following morning he will jump back to the original party, or he will decide to go into, trying to catapult formation of a fresh new political party altogether. You discover that issues based in the electioneering campaign are normally jettisoned, because the primordial interest of an average politician is the gain rather than the service. So the definition of politics as a game of service, you should be the servant of God to come and exhibit service and be somebody who will be the laborers of people, who will be navigating Nigeria into the developmental level. It's not there. Rather, the interest is normally tailored towards what do I get? How do I get it? Whom and whom do I use to get it? And that is the danger of a contractocratic type of political experiment we are practicing, whereby money is virtually the determinant of it all. Whereby if you don't have money, you cannot even become a candidate, because you need to get money to even buy this. The case Professor Amadi was making of the Second Republic, if you remember, both the First and the Second Republic, you will discover that if, for example, let's take Second Republic as a case study, if Chief Adenorong Ogunsanya is seated down, Zik was the first president of the country, but Zik, when he comes, he will sit at a lower chair, because Adenorong Ogunsanya is the father, is the chairman of the party. So Zik, who as a candidate, is a son and is a passenger in the DC. There is respect. Or if Shehu Shagari come in as sitting president, then you understand. By the time Chief Adisa Akinloye is sitting down with Alhaji Suleiman Takuma as the national secretary of the party, Shagari will sit down there. But now, because of the capitalist type of tailored spirit in the political experiment, you will discover that once you become Your Excellency, it means you are even too big to even attend party meetings at the party secretariat. You will discover that a more shameful thing, you will discover that a leader of a political party will go there and be begging a pinch of biscuit from his son, simply because the son is His Excellency Governor or President, looking for a position. We have seen whereby party leaders abandoned the leadership. They went and took ministerial or other subsidiary positions from the president. So that becomes, an aberration to the original philosophy of politics of service. And those days, they consider your credentials, your antecedents, your qualifications, your quality, your background, you are so many things. You bearing in mind one thing, that we have deficiency now of statesmen in the political power play. In those days, we have more number of statesmen rather than politicians. A politician's interest is he invests his money, he invests his talent, he invests his whatever, whether it's through manipulation, whether it's through rigging, whether it's through use of money, whether it's through thuggery. The objective is let me win. Exactly. When I win, you will hear somebody saying that take the case to the court, because he has sufficient money to be able to take higher sophisticated lawyers that will go on basis of technicalities. to be able to give him victory. Like Professor said, at the end of it, you will discover that the court will be the determinant of who ultimately is the winner of the democratic power play. But in those days, the situation was different. You'll discover that they go there and evolve. Remember the way Shehu Shagari evolved as the president. 5 of them were asked to select one out of them. Metamasule of blessed memory, Adamu Chiroma, Professor Iya Abubakar, Shehu Shagari himself. At the end of it, they consensus, they came out with one candidate. Even the case of the First Republic that time when Amadou Bello looked at Zik and said, you are more civilized than us. You are a journalist, you are somebody that is, for so quite a long time. So he said you should be president, but Zik now said no. Obafemi Awolowo is more educated than me. Let it go to Awolowo. Awolowo said no. Democracy is game of number. Why not Sir Amadou Bello you become? But Sir Amadou Bello said no. I would not be the best material
they kept
for
going
the nation
back and forth
because of my costumes and aristocratic background. Why not this son of poor man, Tafawa Balewa? He said he is tested as foreign affairs minister, works and housing minister. He performed excellently well, and he has more international credential to attract development for Nigeria. Then he said Tafawa Balewa should be rather than himself. But look at the case nowadays. Somebody will say, will be prepared
I need to go and join Ambassador Koyo. She has been standing by. I know when you're alone, you tend to the hours are long. Actually, let me bring you and let's talk about the nitty-gritty of the unfolding events as the campaigns commence fully now. APC launched their campaign today in Jos, and can you tell me some of the silent issues? As we say, we are talking about global best practices where issues are at the forefront of the campaign, especially UK, the United States of America. When we come here, is a sort of personalized campaign. So how are you looking at it? What are the silent issues that needs to be addressed?
I think there's a lot to be said about the state of the economy, and state of the economy, state of security, state of the country's unity itself. A lot needs to be said about the burgeoning youth population. A lot needs to be said about the infrastructure deficit. A lot needs to be said about the whole question around the decentralization and devolution of powers to a lot of that conversation is taking place. I think from the Arise town hall meeting, we could see that the main pillars of those the conversations that took place there were around insecurity and the economy. And to be honest with you, what I think we have not quite heard is what is different. We are not hearing enough about what is different. But I think there are sound bites. There are sound bites we're hearing. Today in Lagos, there was conversation around police, state police, and things like that. There's been conversations around electricity, a lot about the state of electricity in the country. What to do about the crashing debt rate of our what do you call it? Our debt, the country's debt burden. These are issues that I'm sure many of us have heard. I think where we are in terms of understanding is the enormity of the problem is such that we need, and we are looking at who can do something different. And that is not what we are seeing enough of. And that, I think, is where we need to pay a lot more attention. My position will be that we need to challenge the candidates more to tell us why they think some of the methods they are proposing is different from what we have seen in the past, and what we need to do in order to see the methods go better. Which is why, for example, the third force is beginning to form a major part of the conversation, because we are seeing that the kind of language and the kind of positionality taken by some of the candidates in the third force is appealing more to Nigerians, not just because of the content of what is being said, but more because it relates to a sense of this is different. We haven't heard this before. We haven't seen this perspective of ourselves before. This is a political approach that is appealing more to the people than that has been the case in the past. So in that respect, what I would say is that the messaging is probably not filtering through in new and creative ways, which is what I think is missing from all of this. And therefore, we need to ask more questions and interrogate deeper. Unfortunately, we cannot change the candidates we have. These are the candidates we have. We have 4 dominant candidates. As a matter of fact, the candidates of some of the smaller parties are making very, very important contributions, which I don't think enough people are listening to them, because I think people are saying to themselves that how realistic is it that these ones will be able to win the elections. But if you look beyond that, at the conversations they are having, you probably find that there is more content to what they are saying, and more innovativeness in the things they are coming across with. So I would like to say that the work of the media going forward should be, how do we go behind some of what is being said, to ask questions and unravel some of the areas that remain grey and have not been quite explained and convincing enough for us as citizens to buy into.
Okay, thank you, Ambassador Okoyo. I'll come back to you on other issues that I feel we should discuss on this program. But like I told you earlier, we have reports that would drive the conversation. Let's take our first report, and it's from Lagos.
Political parties' campaign contains ideas to woo electorates to support their political ambitions.
Security, education, environment, economic crisis, and there is no doubt in my mind that these are very tough issues to handle.
But the major question now is, will such messages promote the rule of law and national cohesion, or cause voter apathy? Political analysts and politicians said issue-based topics, security, good governance, accountability, tackling corruption, transparency, among others, should be the main focus of campaign and not otherwise.
These issues are the critical matters of state that are of interest to the citizen, and they are the issues upon which campaigns should be based.
But when you say I'm going to make sure criminals are dealt with, you are not the judiciary, and the judiciary may not function to leverage on that your promise. So you must put those institutions in front.
First and foremost, we must still address the issue of economy, providing a conducive business environment with which, there will be, massive investment even in agriculture, in a whole lot more, different economic sectors. We provide incentives in such a way that, the current unemployment rate that we have now can be reduced drastically.
When these issues are addressed, Nigerian economy will be viable, and it will help to reduce unnecessary crimes.
INEC guidelines on political rallies have been spelled out in Section 92 of the Electoral Act 2022, which forbids any political campaign or slogan tainted with abusive language, directly or indirectly, or likely to injure religious, ethnic, tribal, or sectional feelings. It therefore behoves on organizers of political campaigns to adhere strictly to the guidelines in order to strengthen national cohesion.
Our next report is from Port Harcourt.
Over the years, most people will identify the burning national issues, which include restoring the quality of educational and health services, economic recovery, repositioning the industrialization of Nigeria, stamping out insecurity occasioned by banditry and terrorism, need for war against corruption, and addressing poverty. Stakeholders say these are only a few of the important issues for the incoming government to pitch its interventions. Beyond these, however, an often ignored dimension of major issues are continuity, implementation of project policies, and improvement of human conditions in the country.
The candidates who are coming to contest should be able to tell Nigerians, explain to Nigerians the measures that they will adopt to ensure that every Nigerian is safe in this country.
Performance, I think that should be the most important thing we look at. How we can encourage people to grow, how we can look at the welfare. Problem with our present democracy is that there is no accountability. People just go into the house, you don't report back to those who sent you.
The concerns around insecurity is central to the ongoing campaigns and development of the country. The need to offer solutions in tackling insecurity, detailed innovation and practical ideas and solutions to problems bedeviling the progress of the country. The citizens say should drive political campaigns.
Let them campaign based on their manifestos, telling us what they have to offer to the country. Let them not go on witch-hunting each other. Let them not go on giving us messages that will heighten insecurity in this country.
Want to able to tell us what they want to do to create industries, that will employ rivers people. Want to be able to tell us what they will do in the educational sector, in every sector that would help in the development of this state.
To this extent, citizens are of the view that 2023 general elections are a watershed which may make or mar Nigeria, as well as determine how much longer the country will drive its democratic governance.
Yes, gentlemen and lady, you've listened to the report and issues arising from it. Before we went for the report, Ambassador Nkoyo said that the message of politicians is not filtering through. Questions should be asked. They should be interrogated deeper. But are they ready to open up to the electorate, apart from the campaign when they go? Because some people say it's all about dancing and singing and then they go away.
Okay, thanks. I think there's a demand and supply of good governance as well as democracy. When the people don't ask for more, the politicians will give you superficial treatment. So no politician really wants to expose themselves or do more than necessary to pass exam. It's like the LCM, lowest common denominator, multiple, okay? Lowest common multiple. So whatever it is that you can use the lowest effort to achieve result, you do it. But when you're taken to task, example is with the fact that today the contest is no longer between two major parties, but now four major parties. And more. I mean, at least major in terms of major. Okay, 4. It has pushed the parties and the leaders to do extra. If it was basically slam dunk, okay, one main party and one weak party, then the major party were basically campaigns I remember very well in 2007, 2011, campaign was largely you fly into a state capital. You hold a rally, some of the leaders speak, and then everybody here. They bring crowd, bust them in, give them their 1,000 or whatever, and they go home. Then you go to Kaduna, you do that. You go to Bini, you go to Imo, and so on and so forth. But now you can see there's now greater focus group. People are now holding. The APC had their focus group in Nasarawa, I think, and Niger. The Labour has had their own. PDP has held. So the fact that people are now not too sure that it's a slam dunk, open and close, forces politicians to try to do more. What I hear Okoye say is, and she's right, there have been several points around the economy. I've studied the manifesto of the leading parties they want available, including NMPP manifesto. What you see, that's expected of manifesto, is broad generalization, broad ideas. So you're not going to see details and how to in the manifesto. So what we should be doing now is to interrogate these manifestos in terms of how the candidates intend to do it. 2, we have to also match this manifesto and these statements of intent with profile. So you kind of say, okay, if somebody tells me, if somebody who has been a legislator, let's say a senator for 4 years, has come for the election, for example, and tells me he or she will do X, Y, Z, it's reasonable to say, what has he done before? And then how do I predicate what he will do? Of course, there could be reasons why he didn't do what he ought to do. There could be issues, but that's a kind of conversation. Second, and this is important, the role of media and investigators. If you look at democracy across the world, it's in public interest for people to go back and say, this man says A, fact checking. What he said doesn't really match with what actually happened. It's part of democracy now. Why is it so? Because people, fake news and disinformation and misinformation is now at craft level. Some people are experts.
And hate speech.
Hate speech. So you need to go back and review what people are saying and say, first, hate speech. Are there criminal issues that could prosecute? And I think that when people say, oh, politicians, stop saying nonsense, stop abusing people, the way to control it is to trigger the legal framework that says if a statement is this, you can query. And INEC, for example, could probably call party leaders' attention. Look, this is what you guys said in your communication XYZ day. Please explain or stop. You have to control. The other issue is that we need to understand that the crisis we are facing now is much more damaging than we had in the past. In the past, some of the crises didn't have the global dimension and they are complicating every day. Take, for example, flooding. Now, flooding, we've had flooding in this country, but every day the climate is damaging. Every day the consequence of flooding becomes more devastating. And so if we had treated it with 50% attention in previous elections, it deserves 80 to 90. And so I would like to sit and see the strategy plan. And after at least two of the four major parties have gone on some visits.
Yes, to flood.
At least two of them. And the other party, who didn't go, has also sent money, and people have gone for the party to look at. The question then is, what did you see? So let you then tell us what they saw.
What can you do to change the narrative?
What have you seen as the crisis, the human and socio-economic losses, and these are the policy response you are. So it's not enough to say we're going to manage climate change. With this very real and urgent crisis, what are you going to do different? This is the kind of, so I think that the flood should even constitute a major plank of interrogation. This is real. We're talking about, latest cut, about 4.2 million displaced, according to the report, and about 1.5 million people. In fact, in Kogi
almost 700 dead.
In Kogi alone, about 100 and something kilometers were at a 4-point cutoff. So this is really, it has untold economic crisis. In fact, in the years to come, disease, pandemics, things can come out of it. So what are these leaders thinking in terms of prevention, mitigation, and redressing these issues?
Yes, we'll interrogate.
So I think we need to, we need to sit back and say, we should refuse to be bamboozled by too much grammar. And by the way, don't forget, manifestos can be written. That's what experts live for. I can do that as a professional. But the key thing is, how does a president does not need to be a PhD in economics, but we want to show that the president understands what he would do and is passionate about it and can at least speak generally about what he wants to do. So I don't expect to see a president become a professor of economics or finance of Harvard. But I want to see level of sincerity, commitment, and a sense that he has understanding of how to solve those key problems.
Okay, thank you. We'll take a break. When we return, this very interesting conversation will continue. Just stay.
The 157-kilometer Lagos-Ibadan Railway is the first double-track standard gauge railway to be built in West Africa. The Mobolaji Johnson train station is a masterpiece, an infrastructure that is gradually becoming an iconic building in Lagos State. The modern facilities put the station on a world map of train stations. Likewise, other new train stations across the country built to world-class standards. The train and its convenience is indeed an admirable effort, with commendations from Nigerians.
This is a station that we have to commend the federal government for putting a beautiful face, empowering us in Lagos State, not only in economic and political arena.
I can say that I'm really impressed with the infrastructures in place. Kudos to the Minister of Transportations. Kudos to the federal government.
Truly, good things are coming out of Nigeria, and the federal government is deserving of all the applause.
NTA Tuesday Live, a network issue-oriented innovation talk show.
You're welcome back, and we have reports that can ginger this conversation further. Let's take this report from Kaduna.
Kaduna Metropolis is bubbling with life as political parties crisscross to canvass for support. Apart from realignment of forces and nocturnal engagements, the political atmosphere is becoming more interesting among candidates.
We need someone that can help us to stabilize the economy.
And a leader that will make us happy and smile. Let them look at this basic amenity: water, road, shelter, and the issue of youth.
Beyond political rhetoric and permutations, some extraneous interests remain dominant factors in the forthcoming general elections.
Many villages were being electrified during the PDP. So schools were being constructed. You cannot mention the number of schools that have been constructed during the PDP. The workers' entitlement, benefit, everything we used to, everybody is enjoying.
Let the good people of Nigeria access what the APC government did with impartiality. Maybe the issue of security, infrastructure, economy, and corruption. Let them judge us based on all these things.
We are going to experience a new dawn in a country where Nigeria will once again be plugged into the global map of a country that has gotten to a level in improved health, improved education, improved security, improved job creation.
My employ to the citizens will be look at the future. Look at your life today. Look at where you want to be in the next 5, 6, 7 years and vote towards that line. The politicians will always be politicians. But look at reason. Listen to your voice of reason and look at your country. Look at your security situation. Look at your economic situation. And look among the candidates who can be able to provide leadership and character for the nations to move forward.
Electorate appear wise enough not to fall victims of politics of inducement and character assassination. Rather, they are looking up to a set of leaders with credibility and ability to take the country to a promised land.
The next report is from Enugu.
Nigeria as a country has been immersed in political campaigns since the First Republic. Political campaign has always existed in one form or the other. However, the trend of disruptive campaign strategies, which is relatively new in Nigeria, is taking a dangerous dimension. With the 2023 general elections around the corner, political parties, politicians, and gladiators are expected to drive their campaigns based on the salient issues and shun fake promises. According to the respondents, issues like security, good governance, accountability, transparency, infrastructure, and rule of law should form the driving force for their campaign to convince the electorates.
It behooves on Nigerians to demand honestly from all manner of leadership and aspirants particularly to speak to power and also deal with the issues at stake and not making incendiary or inflammatory statements or beating around the bush.
We believe that the campaign should be issue-based. The campaign should be on issues. What will you bring on the table? What do you have for the country? How do you fight insecurity? How do you revitalize our economy?
The respondents are of the view that such issue-based campaign will bring about national cohesion and development. Campaigns for elected positions for 2023 elections have commenced. It is expected that Nigerians will elect credible, transparent, and competent leaders that will consolidate on the achievements of the present administration in surmounting the security and other challenges facing the country.
You're welcome back. And don't forget, the phone lines will be open for you to contribute to this conversation. But now let me go to Ambassador Nkoyo. One thing that, stands out when we're discussing politics, in Nigeria is the participation of women and youths in the electioneering process itself. They are not being given much attention. And we saw how the National Assembly threw out, so many issues concerning women earlier this year. And it's just heartbreaking to see that they form the larger part of the electorate, but still, they are not counted as very important. What's your take?
In the sense of the numbers, when you look at the elective, the composition of those who are going to eventually lead us, I think that's a truth. There's a truth. There's some truth in that we haven't done very well in terms of the internal processes of parties that lead. That's the party primaries that result in the emergence of candidates of the party who are either young persons or women. That hasn't worked. But I must say that for this election, every vote is beginning to count. BVAS is a change around for the dynamics in most election, in this election. And political parties are beginning to look at the votes very seriously. To cast your vote, it was another thing to know that the results of that election represented the votes that were counted. But I think from the elections we've seen in Edo and Ekiti and later in Osun, we're beginning to see a pattern where even if you see the numbers, if you see the difference between the numbers of people who the margin on which the elections themselves were won, you will see that the contestation is beginning to become extremely narrow and intense. And with that intensity comes the question of people recognizing that the votes of women as well as that of young people are the majority of the votes, and they are becoming important. My sense of this is that by the time political parties begin to realize that they cannot win elections without bringing in young people or depending on the Women's Council, the PDP has followed in the same line by forming a youth council. So they are beginning to want to do something about that constituency. And I think that it's an interesting development and something we must watch very closely. And hopefully the way the young people have gotten into the Obi campaign, for example, or the Labour Party campaign, is also indicative of a new trend. So I think we can argue that we are not going to see the numbers that we expected in terms of women and young persons at the end of the day, out of this primary, out of the way the primaries was done. But ultimately, my hope is that after 2023, the issues will be addressed more frontally, because this is beginning to become issues of how parties win or lose an election.
Okay, Ambassador Nkoyo, thank you. Let me come back to the studio. We have our first phone call, and it's Justin from Imo. Hello, Justin. Reduce the audio of your television or whatever device you're using so that you can be audible. Okay. You can go ahead.
Hello.
Good evening.
Okay, hold on.
I can hear you.
Hello?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. What I'm seeing from the screen is for young youth to... Hello?
I'm listening to you. Go on.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, but you can see the young youth are supposed to develop this country of this Nigeria, because I'm seeing the screen. I've been watching this program for long. So I want this country to be peaceful so that we can take control of the young youth to make sure this country grow for good, not for bad, because are doing something with settlement, and because of what is going on in this country, because of money, they cannot say the truth. Because God will help us. God will help us. One God will help us. Thank you very much. That was my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin from Imo. Let's come back here to the studio. Political campaigns are usually based on silent issues and of national significance, and Nigeria is confronted with a myriad of critical issues, especially environmental challenges, which Professor Amadi, spoke about: population explosion and crashing crude oil prices, insecurity, kidnapping. So much going on in this country, and when you hear the campaigns from the campaign trail, not much is being talked about this issue by the candidate elaborately. So are you saying that do the citizens have a role to hold them accountable to this conversation they have with them and how it plays out when they're elected into office? Before you answer, let's take this call from Sadiq from Sokoto. Sadiq, go ahead.
Okay, I don't know the question.
Hello, Sadiq.
Now?
Go ahead, I can hear you.
I wish you more of time.
I can hear you. Speak up.
Okay, I don't know the question. I wish you more of
Mia Kisuju, please respond.
Thank you so much. Well, it depends on what we want to hear, really. And of course, I also take that opportunity to revisit Professor's outlook on political education. The truth of the matter is the media cannot do it alone. The Nigerian media, like virtually all the jurisdictions, have limited reach. So you always have another tier, of political education, mostly at whatever level, either at the rural level or even in urban centers and all that. You have political influencers. And these are the people mostly that are responsible for secondary education. It's not ideal, but in our reality, that's the truth. You can measure how many number of people have access to media education, media information, as it were, even in Nigeria. So when you see people that are also informed, they are a secondary source of political education. So these are the people that are there, and of course they come into this role over time because of a socialization process too. They are not usually seen as politicians. They might be community leaders, they may be household leaders, they may be retired senior civil servants and all that, and they are respected for whatever they say within the community. Now, it's if we are saying the politicians are not engaging us enough, it will seem as if we are not going out of our way to also seek out information. And that is the responsibility of an active citizenship. It is the responsibility of that citizen to go out and seek information, especially where it concerns evaluation. Because in determining who you want to vote for or who you want to canvass for, you have to personally conduct a process of evaluating that person in terms of character, in terms of disposition, and of course in terms of potential capacity to deliver on his promises. So we have all these issues, for instance, that we talk about. And I wonder sometimes what exactly happened to the Nigerian elites. Let me also quickly inform Ambassador that in 2019, there was actually a women and youth campaign council of the APC. So this is not novel again. We have women and youth. Unfortunately, I don't have politicians here that would get at that level.
Yes.
But I am trying to say that
She was a House of Rep member, a politician.
I know you were also a politician, but you are not representing a party now. You know,
once a politician, always a politician now.
No, he's a professor. For now, it's outside the circle, but those of us that know him, we know his tendency. But the truth of the matter is, for me, it's about where we are seeking our information and where we are getting our information. I am passionate about this government, the current government, because I understand the challenges it had, to undertake and wade through. This is a government in 7 years plus that had on hand up to $200 billion, inherited $63 billion debts, had just about $2.4 billion in its excess crude account, inherited $5.6 billion joint venture cash call, heavy burden, heavy debt burden,
and the recession,
and the looming, and of course it just had a recession thrown in its lap. It was surviving that recession when COVID triggered recession came in. And today, those of us that are stalwarts of the party can proudly stand and say, despite all this, we have been able to achieve this and that, and especially if we are looking at a global economy, or as you said, global environmental challenges, we are still seeing a government that has been able, in different ways, address these issues. Talking about environmental challenges, I want to say that the candidate of my party, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has clearly defined approaches and direction on how to manage the climate change challenges. And of course, again, Prof, please, I know professors are critical when they read. Get the action plan. We don't call it manifesto.
I have it in office.
So if you
call it the action plan.
Yes, it's not a manifesto. And I like to correct this.
Yes,
it is the party that owns the manifesto. It is from that manifesto that all candidates of the party will now draw their action plan, plan for whatever and all that. Is a manifesto that gives that umbrella, and that is what our candidate has done in virtually all aspects, of challenges and prospects that are confronting Nigeria. For instance, I can tell you that for every bit of that, in that action plan, we talked about the transition fuel. Clearly, Atiku did not say. Atiku, in fact, Obi said he is yet to come out with his manifesto. Please look at the Atiku zone. I am telling you now to go and look at it and see if there is a transition, energy transition plan, specifically. If there is talk about climate change, and how to use river basin authority, not just for agriculture, but of course to engage climate change, in that action plan. So if whatever we are talking about, and we are talking about the economy, we are also seeing the prospect of a paradigm shift, in the modeling of our budgeting. It is my candidate that has put that down. None of the candidates of the parties have done that. So what I'm trying to say is, the candidate too has been able to authenticate and validate what this current government is doing, and is not shying away from saying that this government has built for itself a foundation that it can build on. And that's what pleases me most, because that is continuity. And the truth of the matter is, for the first time in the history of this country, I think I heard Prof said something about 8 years ago when he was still NAC, talking about diversification of the economy. I have been following you for some time. When I saw you, I just recognized you. You talked about that. But now we can start boasting that indeed the Nigerian economy, either the revenue or resources, is being diversified. But it is because of the policies of this government.
We have been diversifying. Because by the time you became the biggest economy in Africa, it was because of largely contribution of service sector and agriculture. So we have seen increased diversity. We have been diversifying.
We have always depended on under Jonathan, we were doing more than $5 billion per annum on food imports.
Gentlemen, we need to take
we
this
are
call.
not doing
Can you
that.
please? We need to take this call. Nigerians want to contribute. We'll take this call from Adam. Adam, you're on.
Good evening.
The conversation is getting heated. Let's hear a contribution.
Hello.
Hello, Adam.
Good evening.
Evening.
How are?
Alhamdulillah.
How is our Nigeria?
We thank God.
How's the campaign of jobs?
It's okay. Just get straight to the point. We're running out of time.
The main point is here, this is our Nigeria. Hello?
I'm listening to you. We're all listening.
This is our Nigeria. We got to handle young people that will control the Nigeria very well. In terms of the PPC candidate, Peter Obi, because he's the main candidate that is supposed to be elected, because these old people themselves who don't like themselves.
Okay, Adam, we get your point here. While the conversation was going heated, political parties definitely. You said manifestos have come out. People are reading it. Nigerians are becoming aware of all these things that these political parties have in store for them. But how do they get access to these people? It's easy to meet in the campaign field, but after that, access becomes difficult. So how can they take their complaints? Who do they take it to?
Well, I think the point that Ni is making...
You want to talk to me?
No, the point you're making is clear, that the parties have what I call a manifesto, action plan, work plan. There's something they are put on the table. But the point we are making is that the people may need to ask questions. And that's why I talk about the town halls. I've always argued that, like in the US...
But is everybody that has access to the town hall meetings?
But that's why you talked about secondary education. Okay. It's not ideal that everybody will have access to everybody. But when your son who is in the university goes to a town hall, for example, on Watch Us Tonight, he can go back and tell his mom, this is what I think. What I think we should focus on, this is campaign season, but let other parties try as much as they can to take the message further down to the people. Okay. Well, there's a mechanism. If you don't do that, and your opponent does before you, they will frame the narrative against you. So the parties even know it's in their own interests. Like you said, you have canvassers at ward, polling unit. So that mechanism means that the parties is in their own interest to take message to the people. Now, what we do as people who are in centers, civil society and media, is to be the ones now framing the issues that the poor people who don't have voice. So when we say you are a civil society or a media, we hear people talk about, for example, it's talking about, let's say, the diversification now.
Yes, of the economy.
Yeah, people can now say, well, we have diversified, but these are our problems, our problem. It's that issue that we pick up and say, Mr. President, for example, at one of the town halls they had the other time, I asked a question, how do you deepen the economy, deal with the structural issue? All the candidates talk about, we're going to diversify. And somebody says, look, if you look at our national development policy from 1965 to up to even the new one the president did in 2021 to 2025, we always talk about diversification. But the question now is, how do you ensure that we have growth that will carry the poor along? How do you mainstream poverty issue into their growth trajectory so that while the economy is growing at a point to grow about 7%, now we are moving up after COVID, okay, 3 point something. Now even if we get to 5, 6, Ashwaju is targeting about 7%. Now if you have, we have had 7 for like 10 years, it didn't diminish so much poverty. China has doubled the economy in about 13, 15 years, their GDP, and took 760 million people out of poverty. India did their own about 20 years or thereabout, and took about 50% poverty to 10. So we can ask questions and say, okay, sir, you're going to advance the economy, you're going to grow the economy, but show us the policy instrument that we use to ensure that this time around, growth will equal to poverty reduction. These are the kind of conversation that we can bring up from grassroots to people like him who have a document and who are part of the campaign and say, Nii, can you advise us? So, Nii, I agree with you that this government is not on the ballot. The person, Buhari, is exiting.
Yes. After 8 years.
After 8 years. History,
we're seeing a new government.
Every president is judged by history. Some people say he didn't do well. Later people say, oh, he did well. Some people say he did well. Later people say he didn't do well. So he is finishing his job. A new president will come in 2023. APC, PDP, Labour, NNPC, and 18 other parties, and 14 other parties. Our question as Nigeria is, tell us, if you're going to continue the president's platform, how? If you're going to improve or change, how? So the debate is now, at this point, it's no longer about President Buhari because he is coasting home for the final lap. The debate is, how do you deal with the new challenges of today? How have you done it before? A party in power continuity, yes, that's fine. But what is I going to change? What is I going to do better? Then it's left for us to say, you have done well, or you have not done well. Even if you have done well, we can say, Mr. IB doesn't look like somebody who will do what you've done, or he'll do better. What it's all about. Okay. So you, as a former BBMO and now president campaign, take it easy. No,
yes, we see. Before I come to Nasarako, go to join the conversation, as he has been very quiet, observing and listening, and I'm sure he has a lot to talk about. Let's take Aliu from Makodi. Hello, Aliu.
Yeah.
You can go ahead.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Everybody in there. Hello?
Go ahead, I'm listening.
Hello. Okay. My contribution is the election is around the corner. All what we need to do now for Nigeria is to be praying to give us the right leader that will lead us well. So I believe all those arguments talking to this one and this one is not relevant for now. So what we need is prayer for a good leader to manifest. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
This is my contribution.
Okay, thank you so much, Aliu. And let me bring in Menasara Kogo. We talked about silent issues of environmental challenges, population explosion.
You see,
crashing crude oil prices. We're a mono economy, and we've been talking about diversification. But if small and big businesses can thrive, can it thrive without electricity? Power is very, very important here.
Well, Nigeria has never gotten cluster combination of many myriad of problems like we are having now. And it is very, very important. We should interrogate the people campaigning for us to get our votes. First of all, whenever they said this, how will you make it different? How will you make it different? Remember the three main cardinal principles under which the current government came on board. The issue of the economy, fight against corruption, and the third one, the issue of what is the third one? Insecurity. Now the main problems we have, which I want the citizenry to really interrogate whosoever comes looking for your vote. Number one is the issue of national unity. After the Civil War, where we lost over 3 million Nigerians, spending over 30 months of the war. Useless war, I call it useless because at the end, no winner, no vanquished. We have never gotten the country so divided along ethnic lines like we are having now. So much so that you have ethnic militia. You know, in some parts, they are even dictating when you should come out and when you shouldn't come out. So, number one is how do we get national cohesion, national unity? The Nigerian should move from different parts of the country free as a bona fide citizen of the country. Number two is how do we get issue of security? Security has now become the monster in every home. There's nowhere that you can say is security free in the country. How do you solve the problems of insecurity for us? The third one is the issue of grand corruption. We have been corruption, in its hydra-headed form, changing its own style by the day. We have made series of appeals, whether it's establishment of anti-corruption court or whatever. What is the magic? What do you have different that you are campaigning that we should vote for you? The issue to fight the issue of corruption. The fourth one is the issue of poor state of the economy, the unacceptable state of indebtedness against Nigeria, the issue of our foreign reserve, the issue of the liquidity value of our currency, the issue of purchasing power, the inflation. So many things are there under the issue of the poor economy. How do you get us out of this economic doldrum? The next one is the issue of the unemployment level. It's popularizing the youth restiveness. Young people now cannot even think of any plan for future because of the seeming impossibility for a young man when he did his national service to get even if it's manageable employment, not to talk of comfortable employment. The issue of unemployment. There are rumors about that virtually if you want any employment, is either you have your crony in the helm of affairs or whether you have money to buy. So how do we get employed, our restive youth employed? The next one is the international image. Nigerians have created a very negative name for themselves. Wherever you go, you said you are a Nigerian. The way they look at you, even within the continental level, is not really commensurate with our status as a giant in the emerging world. The next one is the issue of education. Classically is the issue of this ASU federal government feud. We have never gotten it like this. 8, 9, 10 months of squabbles between the academic staff union over some issues. The central line between the ASU and the government is national interest, the national question.
But most candidates are saying it should be a thing of the past.
What I am saying is that we should tickle them.
Yeah,
what do you do different?
What do you do different? What are they going to do?
The next one is the issue of poor state of infrastructure. Epileptic state of electricity, poor state of roads. From Mokwa, if you want to come through Bida to come to Abuja, is a Herculean task. Most of the trunk A roads that we got right before independence, are virtually collapsed, and there are no news. Exactly. You see. So how do we get them? How do we get those rail tracks that the colonialists, built, and we abandoned them, and we decided to come into some cosmetic arrangements? How do we get more rail lines? How do we get more this general issue of connectivity within the country? How do we make every state capital a trunk A road with a dualized road system in the country, so as to be able to solve the issue of huge rise in air, this in traveling, the bashing we are getting from the international community regarding Nigerians exodus into their countries and the rest. The next one is the issue of ecological challenges. How do we solve these issues of ecological challenges? We have Ministry for Humanitarian and other this thing, but it is really utopian. Most shameful for Nigeria to see our Vice President going into local market donating 5,000 as a means of solving this issue of unemployment. Say he wants to lift those people out of poverty. You can't lift people out of poverty with that type of system. I think with 21st century, intellectual analysis should go beyond such a time, even because of the security risk of our Vice President going to local markets donating 5,000. Oh, it should pass that level. So people should bring about serious, realistic, critical types of blueprint on how we would be able to get people out of state of poverty in the country. These are some of the issues I expect the politicians to come to bring in their manifestos, and then when they come, social groups, civil society groups, and town clubs, community societies should organize themselves into pressure groups, so that you will be forcing the politicians to go into signing contract, social contracts in the practical form. What and what deliverables do you promise if we elect you into power, so that it will be the basis of determining whether or not to renew that mandate after 4 years, or to jettison you for somebody that is more serious?
Okay, Minister, you continue on this conversation. Let me join Solomon from Port Harcourt. Solomon from Port Harcourt, if you're there, can you go on? Carry on.
Hello, are you hearing me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, I greet you all. Let me go straight to my question. My question goes to Alajuma.
Omar Kogo, yes.
I'm asking him, my question goes to him.
Yes.
Please, in the interest of the electoral law, let Alajuma flash the area in the electoral law which stipulates the punishment that will be given to any political party or presidential candidate who rig election. Because for me, somebody who is coming to be a president of this country shouldn't be talking of falsifying results or rigging election by going to the Supreme Court. So that person, I regard that such person as area father, is not qualified to be our father and to lead us, because he's coming through the window or through the ceiling. So I want Omar to bring out the portion of the electoral law that states the punishment that will be given to any of these parties or political or presidential candidates who falsified election results in order to win, so that we too will be sensitized and know the kind of leadership we are going to have next in the country. Because rigging election is atrocious and it is a sacrilege. Because there is no way you'll be telling me anything you will do for me as a president when you rig the election to come and rule me or come and rule us. So I don't think it is the correct thing. So let him tell us area of the electoral law where it is stipulated the kind of punishment that will be given to the presidential candidate who forged the result and become our leader. Thank you very much.
Your response?
Yes, quickly, because of the time constraint. The Electoral Act has made a very excellent provision regarding this type of things. So number one, fundamentally, is a criminal offense. It's a criminal offense, and Section 84 says even the political party can be penalized up to a tune of 10 million naira in event of any collusion between the political party and the candidate. And then secondly, you have Section 57 and 58 that talks about the responsibility on the side of INEC. On the side of INEC to utilize any, to apprehend whosoever is responsible and then prosecute him. But that is where you have the problem, because INEC doesn't have police of its own. INEC doesn't have this electoral offences court under it. INEC doesn't have anything. So INEC has to rush back to the position of the Constitution under Section 174, especially subsections 1, 2, and 3, whereby the Attorney General should be the one to be in charge of the prosecution, which is the Director of Public Prosecution there. But where we have the fundamental problem we have is that we are talking about what the quantum of penalties. Penalties depend on the gravity of the offense you have committed. You have avalanche of offenses there, from what Section 114 to 129 of the Electoral Act specified, and many more others. But the problem we have is it has become a culture and a norm whereby there is weakness in enforcement of penalties on wrongdoers. You see people committing criminalities, people committing offenses, various offenses, but how many of them have we seen being penalized in previous electoral dispensation periods? You will discover that because of that weakness, it is very, very important. That is the reason why we are calling for establishment of Electoral Offences Commission, Electoral Offences Court, and it's very serious penalties to be imposed, rather than issues of fine, which most politicians are prepared to commit whatever criminality and then use fines. And then you have to look at it from the angle of the weakness of Section 36 of the Constitution that says no matter how grievous are the quantum of your offenses, you are adjudged to be a free citizen. Only the only thing that can be meted as a name is you are an accused person until adjudged guilty by the court of competent jurisdiction. And at the end of it, you will discover that on the altar of technicalities, you will be able to use money to hire the most sophisticated lawyers like Prop and the rest. And at the end of it, if care is not taken, they throw away the decision they said because of one particular thing, the doctrine of probability of doubt. once there is any iota of doubt in the minds of the umpire, that is the judge, then they can say that it has not been proved beyond reasonable doubt. And that is some of these are some of the albatross we'll have in our own legislation. It is very, very important that we should clearly scrutinize the provisions of sections 230 to 304 of the Constitution that talks about the judicature, so that we will be able to now really panel beat and see all those areas of judicial lacuna and be able to really make amends, so that at the end of it we will be able to see justice in the interest of fairness so being dispensed, rather than justice on the altar of the whims and caprices of who is at the umpire in the court, or how excellent is the quality of the lawyer you are hiring to defend you at a particular case.
Okay, Professor Amadi, briefly.
Okay, no, just to say that, look, Mike Guinea prosecuted the federal, the INEC commissioner, recent commissioner in Akwa Ibom, prosecuted a professor who committed electoral, who helped to rig election.
Yes.
So it's not like it cannot be done. And the issue has always been that the Attorney General, who often is a political appointee, may not do that. But again, we shouldn't remove the 36, which says fair hearing. Otherwise, in politics, people can be persecuted. Again, presidential candidates are not the ones who basically rig election, because they themselves are not close to. We should watch out for INEC officials, watch out for the ad hoc staff, and watch out for parties themselves. But there are low-hanging fruit. The Electoral Act has provided for campaign finance. I'm in court now. We have gone to court. On Thursday, we'll be in court to challenge INEC to roll out framework for money. The law says parties can't spend more than this. This is the number of amount you can contribute. INEC has not provided framework and monitor it. So,
like other clients,
other places. So we have a lot of work to do. It's not about the position of the lawyers themselves or fair hearing. There must be fair hearing. It's about regulated action. There are things that are low-hanging fruits. INEC can prosecute other workers who have failed to do their job, professors who come and rig election. Let's even start there before we get to if any presidential candidate. I doubt if a presidential candidate even has the connection to actually rig. Maybe party leaders can rig.
Yes, yeah.
Security officials, INEC officials, ad hoc staff, not presidential candidates themselves who will be at home waiting for what their field officers have done.
Well, this conversation cannot be complete without one issue, and that is political thuggery. We've seen like 50 attacks in 1 month across states, signifying a major electoral violence. But I'll take that question first to Ambassador Nkoyo Teo. What is to be done about that?
Well, first and foremost, the Electoral Act is very clear on that issue of violence and the implications that has on the election itself. You can't work. Violence is violence. It's a crime, and it's something that needs to be prosecuted. You haven't got any other short court in dealing with something that is a crime. So I believe that we are back to the conversation that has just been happening by both Professor Amadi and the gentleman about how do you get the tribunals in place so that we can begin to prosecute some of these things that are there in the Electoral Act. So that's a major gap in terms of what is happening with the new Electoral Act that has come into place. But I guess the other thing is to put a little bit more pressure on the parties. But I to be honest with you, the only thing is that things must have consequences. Once things don't have consequences, they'll continue to happen. So far, we've seen some rallies, some situations in rallies. We've seen some situations in public arena where things are happening, and people are open to violent behavior. We have heard some allegations that the police has looked away. The police hasn't done the much needed role it needs to play as a civil arm of the security force that is meant to try and ensure that there's peace and order in the conduct of these things. So there are issues which the nitty-gritty, the nuts and bolts of what needs to happen, and the connectivity with the judicial system and the legal system itself is still not quite in place. And that's something that I think we need to give some attention to. Earlier on today, I was at the Economic Summit Group meeting where we talked about succession planning, for example, and it came across that even after people have won elections, like it has happened in Osun, it has happened in Edo, it has happened in Ekiti, that transition from one government to another is not as seamless as we think. What some of the intelligence I'm getting from Osun is that the incumbent government has not actually done anything to hand over the reins of power to the next incoming government. So there are aspects, what I'm trying to say is that there are aspects of the law that still need to be evolved. They still need to be developed into a body of frameworks like Dr. Amadi has just talked about. Those frameworks are the frameworks. But to be honest with you, I think INEC can be more innovative, because when it provides guidelines for how you won an election, those things are not spelled out in the law themselves, but they go out of that into that administrative space and make that happen. So I guess what we need to do is to pressurize INEC a little bit more to take some initiative in trying to bridge the gaps. We don't have to reduce everything to specific provisions of the law before we begin to see more more rigor in the application of the provisions that we see in the Electoral Act. Okay. But overall, I wouldn't say that this has been a very violent election so far, but we still need to continue to watch and look out for possible red alerts or warnings of a possible crisis of election.
Okay, Ambassador Nkoyo Toyo, she's the former ambassador to Ethiopia. She joined us via Zoom. Thank you so much for your contribution. Now, gentlemen, in 30 seconds each, let's have your final thoughts on what we just discussed with Ambassador. Political Togri. In 30 seconds each, we've run out of time. Me starts.
I think given our past experience, and if we do a comparative analysis, I would align myself with the submission by Ambassador that the indication of violence are not been anything near what we've recorded in our past. You know, one, because of the length of time allowed for campaign, the stress points are not too sharp. Then two, you can see a mix of focus group engagements and general campaign. The focus group engagement actually, perhaps for me, is the most important, because you are targeting particular interest groups per state, and you are doing a conversation than the normal just go in 2 hours and you come out.
Your 30 seconds off. How do you get it right?
Sure, I think I agree that we've not seen a large, a great degree of violence. But look, this is a long election and it's peaking. The trend is moving. So it's time for watchfulness, vigilance, and basic fair rule keeping. The security people have to be on their feet and do the work. But again, town halls might minimize the incidence of violence as rallies provoke them.
It should be a collective responsibility. We shouldn't leave it only to INEC. INEC is already battling with about 600 cases so far. I think I sympathize with INEC. And the law enforcement agencies, the judicature should come into rescue by really going into these things expeditiously. And apart from that, also we should imbibe the culture of penalties for wrongdoing. People are committing electoral criminalities and they are not being penalized. It shouldn't be in our culture. Okay. We should begin to penalize wrongdoers.
Menatala Kogo Umar, public affairs analyst and international commentator on social relations and global politics. Thank you so much for your insights into this.
Thank you very much.
Me, Akisiju, political affairs analyst and member, APC Presidential Campaign Council.
It's a privilege.
Thank you for bringing your wealth of knowledge through the conversation. And Professor Sam Amadi is a professor of law and former chairman of the Nigerian Electricity Commission, also Director Center for Public Policy and Research. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks a lot.
Yes. And Ambassador Toyo, we've signed you off. Are you still there? Bye. And that's how it's been on the program. Thank you so much for your time. I am Jumbo Yusuf. Remember to stay safe.